everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today we are talking about, Holocaust Memorial Day, and the Women's March, and the New York Reproductive Healthcare Law, aka the abortion law that was just passed, and just kind of, more reflection on the state of the culture war as it proceeds apace here in the United States, and, just reflecting on that. So we'll just go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so Holocaust Memorial today, January 27th, and the BBC is reporting today that shocking levels of denial remain regarding the Holocaust, right? 5% of United Kingdom adults do not believe the Holocaust took place, and 1 in 12 believes its scale has been exaggerated, a survey has found. There's a survey of more than 2,000 people. Right, and so they are very worried about the fact that 5% of UK adults do not believe the Holocaust took place, and twice that many believe that, maybe the numbers were exaggerated, but it did happen. Right, everybody talking about it, making the rounds, all the virtue signaling, right? And Atlantic has an article, this is from a while back, but pertinent to the point, the world is full of Holocaust deniers. A new survey suggests that many Asians, Africans, Middle Easterners, young people, Muslims, and Hindus believe that facts about the genocide may have been distorted. Only 54% of the world's population has even heard of the Holocaust. Right, that was a statistic from the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, right, out there to make sure that everybody is called anti-Semite who has anything to criticize about Israel. Basically 2/3 of the population of the world don't know the Holocaust happened, or they deny it. You see down here the different demographics around the world, and relatively who questions it, who is aware of it, who believes it at all. And you can see Middle East, North Africa, only 8% of residents of Middle East, North Africa region are aware of the Holocaust and believe it has been accurately described by history. 8%, so 92% believe that it at least was skewed and it's not being represented honestly. All right, and they go into the demographics. And so, looking it up, the population of Muslims in the United Kingdom is 5%. So, right, we go back to this article, and that 5%, right, 92% of the 5% that, of Muslims in the United States, pretty much there's your number right there. Good thing Mango Thunderslice is here to solve these complex statistical mysteries. Right, and so International Holocaust Remembrance Day. What's kind of interesting about this, and it's kind of like sickly, sardonically funny, is how often reference gets made to the Holocaust and basically the figure of 6 million, right, as the number of Jewish deaths or victims in the Holocaust. And what's messed up about that is like here on this annual day of commemoration, the UN urges every member state to honor the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and millions of other victims of Nazism. It's like there were more non-Jews killed by the Nazis than there were Jews, and for some reason it's always this 6 million figure that we jump to. Like it's quite obvious that they're implying that Jewish lives matter more than other lives, right? Why would you keep jumping to the 6 million figure? Why is it more important to remember the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust than the, 10 million additional victims who were non-Jewish? That's just interesting how they frame it. Consistently they do that, right? And of course, it's a tragedy, but it's like, why are we focusing on just part of the tragedy? Look a little closely on the narratives that you're fed in this society, and you'll find out all sorts of interesting things, right? Right, and so here's the actual table of supposed deaths in the Holocaust. And so group Jews 6 million, Soviet civilians around 7 million, right? And it includes 1.3 million Jewish civilians, right, who are included. So all right, so about the same amount just in terms of Soviet civilians that were non-Jewish, right? Soviet prisoners of war 3 million, non-Jewish Polish civilians around 1.8 million. I mean, why are these people not important? Why is this not like part of Holocaust Remembrance Day? Their lives apparently don't matter to the globalists and their new global state religion. Right, so anyway, yeah, that's interesting. And of course, if we look to the wider 20th century and the number of people killed by their own governments, we find that the number is fairly staggering, right? We are aware of the Holocaust, and Hitler and blah, 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 Hitler, right? Not too as many people talk about Stalin and the massacres in Stalinist Russia. Fewer still talk about the massacres during the Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, right, in China, and the hundreds, the tens of millions that were killed in the process of that. So democide is the word, basically, of people who were killed by their own government. And you see that the best guess or best estimation for the 20th century was 262 million people, right? These are 1,000 units, so that 262,000 is actually 262 million, right? Wow. Okay, so we know about the Hitler regime and the Holocaust of 6 million Jews, right? Of course, there's more than 6 million non-Jews who were killed in that Holocaust, but we don't hear as much about all the other Holocausts, right? We've got lobotomized people in the United States arguing for socialism, and not just the United States, Europe and all over the Western world, people arguing for socialism, right? And take a look at these numbers. China, 76 million, USSR, 61 million, right? And those eclipse the entire number of deaths committed by colonialism. Right here you see Germany, still a far cry from the communist regimes. But that wasn't real communism. That was a real socialism. Maybe we just give it another try to work. I swear I won't pull the football away this time, Charlie Brown. Right? So yeah, that's staggering, right? 250 million people, right, killed by their own government. And, so the point is basically if we're going to remember tragedy and if we're going to, to have a day of solemn remembrance of the vast crimes that have been perpetrated in the past, I think we should take a fuller look at what's happened, right? It's not just the Jewish genocide, it's the non-Jewish genocides. It's the genocide of Armenians by Turkey, right? It's the genocide of Cambodians by the Pol Pot regime. It's, the genocides that took place in the communist regimes, right? And, of course, not overlooking the, dark steps that the United States empire has taken under the rule of such tyrannical overlord oligarchs like George Bush Sr. and the rest of that whole posse, right? But what's interesting is that as staggering as these numbers are, as horrifying as the state is in all of its raw, ability to kill, without any sort of check or balance, is basically people and their tendency to kill themselves, right? The number of abortions, for example, if we're just going by the raw numbers, 61 million people killed in the United States via abortion since 1973, right? But these people don't matter, just like the non-Jews in the Holocaust in Germany, right? Because these people were not actually born yet. They are still humans. They were still, fully prepared to live a potential human life, and they were extinguished from this planet, right? By Planned Parenthood alone since 1970, 8.3 million, right? Planned Parenthood this year, 25,000. United States this year, 68,832, right? And they want to say that we need to take away guns because too many people are getting killed with guns, right? And of course, they roll out such skewed statistics for that. They'll count suicide victims. For people who shot themselves, they'll count that as an instance of gun violence. Like, yeah, okay, like if you took away guns, they wouldn't have killed themselves. Like, please, right? Black babies in the U.S. since 1973, 18.3 million. So we want to talk about racism. Let's talk about the 18.3 million black humans that never entered this world because of abortion, right? Who are the real racists in this society? Is it the Christians and the people trying to enforce an objective morality for the sake of the benefit of the human species? Or is it the people who believe in abject, atheist, meaningless materialism, who believe that humans are just meat sacks and masses of cells whose lives can be extinguished, at a whim, as long as it suits the greater good and, the convenience of the state? We get to the real total numbers, and it's staggering. Worldwide, since 1980, 1.52 billion, right? Wow. I had no idea the number was that high. I knew the 61 million figure for the United States, and that's staggering, right? That's 1/5 of the democide total, right, of people just killing themselves and their own unborn children. 1.5 billion completely eclipses, right, 6 times greater than the number of people killed by their own government over the course of an entire century. And this is worldwide since 1980, right, 40 years. That is unbelievable. New York just passed a law on the 46th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, right, called the, what is it called? The New York's Reproductive Health Act, right? So that's some Orwellian newspeak if I ever seen one. And Andrew Cuomo, who is just a sad, degenerate politician, like a swamp creature if ever there was one. Today we are taking a giant leap forward in the hard-fought battle to ensure a woman's right to make her own decisions about her own personal health. Like, what about the health of the child? Including the ability to access an abortion. With the signing of this bill, we are sending a clear message that whatever happens in Washington, women in New York will always have the fundamental right to control their own body. Right? It's not their own body. It's a baby's body. Hello? Right? And the law is pretty insane, right? Critics say the law is too far-reaching. We need to be honest with the public and say that this bill does not simply codify Roe versus Wade. What this bill does is expand abortion up to birth and the 3rd trimester. State Assembly Rep. Nicole Malliotakis argued before the state legislature. She criticized the part of the law allowing medical professionals other than doctors to perform abortions, saying Roe v. Wade requires a licensed physician to perform the procedure, but this law removes that requirement and allows the physicians, assistants, nurse practitioners, and midwives to perform abortions. Right? So basically, abortions can be performed up until the birth, right? So in situations where otherwise it would be by default a C-section, right? Because in the 3rd trimester, it's a whole baby, right? There's no abortion, right? A baby's coming out one way or another. It's either an alive baby or a dead baby. So basically, the fact that New York just legalized 3rd trimester abortion is basically just legalizing child murder, because there is no medical necessary situation that exists where an abortion in the 3rd trimester would be required for the health of the mother. That does not exist, right? It would be an emergency C-section. And the fact that they want to change that and say, no, we don't want that to be an emergency C-section, right? We want to make up a scenario, and we're going to basically just demand that we have the right to kill the child. That's basically what they're doing. It is not defensible biologically. It is not defensible ethically. It is just a sign that the Democratic Party today is a death cult, and the liberals of today are caught under the spell of the materialist, atheist, satanic delusion, where they believe, as noted, that they are just meat sacks and just masses of cells, and life is just this quirk of the brain, right? Consciousness doesn't have any meaning, and, so life doesn't matter. So, yeah, a woman, if it's convenient for her because she doesn't want to have a child because it would be, it would cut into her club time, right? It would cut into her alcohol budget, or, maybe she doesn't want to give up her nice car, right? Or wanted to lose her big career, right? That's basically where we're at, that we can kill children for the sake of women's convenience, and that is very sad, right? Here's a Christian perspective. Stunned by New York late-term abortion law? Well, be prepared to be stunned again. As heinous as critics find New York's decision to legalize abortion up until the day of birth, former Planned Parenthood clinic director turned pro-life advocate Abby Johnson warns this is nothing new. It's a much bigger issue than most people realize. The controversial Reproductive Health Act, which was signed into law Tuesday by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, does away with restrictions on abortion past 24 weeks. This woman, Abby Johnson, writes on Facebook, I know that many are disheartened by the New York vote to legalize abortion through birth, but let me be clear. This is already happening in almost a dozen other states. This is not new. Babies have been aborted through birth for quite some time now. New York has just now been added to the list. FaithWire's Will Mall explains effectively abortion will be available on demand up until birth if the woman wants to terminate her fully formed child because she claims it is too much for her to deal with financially, emotionally, or otherwise. She will be allowed to do so. Other states from the KFF list make it clear that the mother's life or physical health must be at risk to allow a late-term abortion, which seems to be proof of that pro-life claim regarding the general health exception. Right? And, the difference about the New York law and the health isn't actually defined in the law, but basically it's clear from the wording that mental health, financial health, economic health, right? Health is basically full spectrum meaning of the word, which means that it can mean anything. So a woman can justify an abortion up until the day of birth, basically without any qualifier. So, people saying that, oh yeah, it's not that extreme, they're wrong. It totally is. What exactly is late-term abortion? Christian author and speaker Lisa Bevere offers this heartbreaking description. Just to drive home the point, here is how a late-term abortion, the kind of abortion just legalized in New York, is carried out. As it has been explained by a former abortionist, the baby is injected with a poison directly into his skull or torso. He then suffers a hideously painful death, which he will certainly feel because of his developed nervous system. The mother carries the corpse around in her womb for a day. The next day there is an ultrasound to check if the baby is dead. If he has been writhing and suffering in pain and agony for the past 24 hours clinging on to life, then he will be injected again. The following day the mother delivers her dead child. And so, right, while the New York satanic liberals are celebrating such a heinous and disgusting milestone and landmark of politics, right, hundreds of thousands marched in Washington for the March for Life. It's the 45th annual, right, 200 to 300,000 attended the event. And, though it was hugely attended, right, and, lots of great people there from the videos, I couldn't actually find so many videos. All the videos were of the Women's March, right? And the Women's March, the one thing I noticed is that the people marching for the Women's March and cheering and celebrating for legalized third trimester abortion are usually fairly hideous. And, there are, some decent looking women and good looking women who, of course, are liberal, right? But in general, the women you see out on the women's marches are just hideous hags. Right, and the women at the March for Life generally seem to have this really just, beautiful glow about them. Maybe it's just confirmation bias, but I really think that the pro-life women are in general more attractive and happier and have this more awesome glow about them, right? And they just seem like happier, better people. Right, and then there's the Women's March, right? And basically it's just one big hate fest and everybody just talking shit on Trump. Right, and nobody has any idea what they're talking about. They're just here to wear their bug-eye sunglasses with their dumb sign and basically bitch about Trump. And, if asked any questions by an interviewer, they'll just run away. Or, basically, they're just there to basically take an Instagram photo and move on and just virtue signal. Because that's what the left is today. There's no smart leftists anymore. It's basically just one big hashtag, public relations thing, this virtue signaling festival that never ends. And, basically it's between the political cultural war now is between people who know what they're talking about and people who are just taking, hashtag selfies for virtue signaling. That's where we're at. And right, so the Women's March, about 100,000 attended. So the March for Life was 3 times the size, but the Women's March got at least 3 times the coverage. And of course there was controversy this time because the organizers of the Women's March are overtly anti-Semitic and affiliated with Nation of Islam people and Louis Farrakhan, people who, are overtly anti-Semitic. And it's interesting to see the fracturing of the left. It's good for Trump's chances in 2020 to see all of the internal contradictions within this tenuous alliance, right? You've got feminists allied with Muslims, right? Even though probably, and LGBT, right? Even though probably the greatest enemy of LGBT and feminists in the world is Islam, right? Is the greatest force of patriarchy in the world in the most literal of terms. Right, and of course Linda Sarsour, terrible, terrible human being. Right, Brandon Straka of the walkaway movement, right, leading people away from the Democratic Party when they realize that it's just a party of hate. They claim to be fighting hate, but really all they do is spew hate, and they don't know what they're talking about. They have no policy recommendations that make any sense at all. They're emotionally driven, and they're just out here basically, emotionally vomiting all over people. Right, and here's a good example of basically the unfuckable hag, right, out here screeching and screaming for my body, my choice. And, here's this, beautiful woman basically holding this, grotesque, macabre sign of abortion results and, basically clearly articulating her own position. Again, the contrast could not be clearer between the lobotomized, brain-dead, liberal zombie horde and, the people who are out here standing up for life, liberty, and freedom in pursuit of happiness, right? That's what America's about. Right, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, apparently a Fox News broadcast a slide on TV suggesting that she died. Right, that's interesting. Right, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, let's see, is 85 years old. She has had pancreatic cancer for the last 10 years. Less than 5% of people survive longer than 5 years after their diagnosis with pancreatic cancer. So, just proof more that money is the cure for cancer. If you've got cancer, just find millions of dollars. That's all you need to cure it. Right. And, it's interesting. People don't know the woman Roe of Roe v. Wade, right, who was the person in the case, the Supreme Court case that led to Roe v. Wade, is actually a staunch pro-lifer now, right? As Roe v. Wade and its allowance for unlimited abortions throughout pregnancy turns 40 today, the woman behind the infamous Supreme Court case has pledged her life to overturning it. Norma McCorvey never wanted an abortion. She was seeking a divorce from her husband, but young pro-abortion feminist attorney Sarah Weddington used McCorvey's case as a means of attempting to overturn Texas law, making most abortions illegal. Weddington took the case all the way to the Supreme Court, which invalidated every pro-life state law in the nation protecting unborn children, and the rest is history. But most Americans don't know that McCorvey, who was pro-choice on abortion at the time, is now a pro-life advocate. She is now dedicated to reversing the Supreme Court case that bears her fictitious name, Jane Roe. In a video, McCorvey explains her effort to obtain a legal abortion in the 1970s when facing an unplanned pregnancy.
The plaintiff in the Supreme Court case, Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion in America and changed our nation in an unprecedented way. Back in 1973, I was a very confused 21-year-old with one child and facing an unplanned pregnancy. At the time, I fought to obtain a legal abortion, but the truth be told, I have 3 daughters and have never had an abortion. However, upon knowing God, I realized that my case, which legalized abortion on demand, was the biggest mistake of my life. You see, abortion has eliminated 50 million innocent babies in the U.S. alone since 1973. Abortion scars an untold number of post-abortive mothers, fathers, and families too. You read about me in history books, but now I'm dedicated to spreading the truth about preserving the dignity of all human life.
Right, and I'm sympathetic to the idea that there are some situations where an abortion does make sense. It should always be recognized as an evil, and very most a necessary evil, but never a good thing, never a positive good thing that should ever be celebrated in any circumstance, right? And researchers discover that abortion regret is not a myth. About 50% of women who receive a medically induced abortion believe they are terminating the life of their unborn child. A 2000 study cited by Hush and prepared by Dr. Brenda Major, professor of psychology and communications at the University of California, recorded that approximately 21% of American women who receive an abortion believe that their abortion did more harm than good. This percentage grew to 28% within 2 years of the abortion. This means that of the 1 million women who have had abortions each year in the U.S., more than 280,000 of them believe within 2 years that their abortion did more harm than good. Sadly, the emotional scars of these hurting mothers are unacknowledged by the media, policymakers, and the mainstream medical community. Instead of compassion, these women have been labeled statistically insignificant by those who wish to protect abortion as a policy in America. Even in the face of countless studies linking abortion to breast cancer and preterm birth, the women most affected by these risks aren't being told the truth about abortion. And this article is talking about a Supreme Court decision in Texas From the Supreme Court's decision, it is apparent that policy has replaced morality in our country. In the words of Albert Mohler, abortion as a policy has become a sacrament of modern humanistic religion that emphasizes the woman as the single moral arbiter of her body. It does not matter your ideological position on abortion. What matters is that people receive the truth no matter the political consequences. So what is the truth? What are the facts? And are abortion providers misleading women concerning the health risks of abortion? The answer that this film gives is an emphatic yes. Dr. Priscilla Coleman, a professor of human development and family studies, published a scholarly critique of the APA report, basically concluding that women who had undergone abortion experienced an 81% increased risk of mental health problems. For any other surgical procedure, patients have the assurance that their doctor and his office are held to stringent medical and health regulations. However, abortion is different. It remains the only medical procedure in our nation that is regulated by the Supreme Court and designated a constitutional right. As long as that is the case, safety will continue to be sacrificed in the name of abortion rights, and nearly 250,000 women a year will suffer emotional harm. And of course, if we want to look at the really nasty aspects of this whole abortion business in the United States, and specifically Planned Parenthood, of course, we know that it has been proven beyond the shadow of doubt in a court of law that Planned Parenthood has been selling baby body parts for profit out of its businesses, which is forbidden by law, but they've been doing it. They've already settled in certain cases. In Orange County, they settled for $7.8 million, and there are suits like this all over the country. This is a regular practice, as videos have proven that have come out. Now, and I'm not one who would necessarily argue in favor of banning abortion. I do think that there are situations where an abortion could be construed as necessary, and I wouldn't take away people's right to the medical procedure because I believe that it is murder, and it is, unequivocally child murder. But this universe isn't all just black and white in morality, much as the anarchists and the social justice warriors would like to think so at times. There's definitely shades of gray in this practicality of this. There's shades of gray, and I definitely I am far less horrified by a chemical abortion in the first trimester within a few weeks of conception than I am for a third trimester abortion when the baby is already fully formed. It could be born, right? To terminate the pregnancy at that point is literally killing a fully formed child that could survive on its own outside the womb. The whole premise of abortion and her body, her choice, and her being the sovereign ruler of anything in her body, even if it's another fully formed human body, right, implies that the baby could not live without the mother. Right. So, but in the third trimester, that argument disappears. The baby could survive without the mother if taken out via emergency C-section. So, it's very clear that the Democrats and liberals are basically a giant materialist, atheist, satanic death cult today, and they're masquerading under this, oh, we're fighting hatred, right? We're so moral and virtuous. But they're actually communists, and they are advocating for supreme evil in our society. And when they talk about gun murders and the immorality of the border wall, right, and then they argue in favor of abortion, right, and we see the actual numbers, and they are absolutely staggering. Right, 1.5 billion human beings have been extinguished since 1980. And, for the people who believe in overpopulation and all that Malthusian bullshit, right, that's not too big of a deal for them. Again, it's moral relativism, right? They think, oh, well, there's too many people anyway, so we might as well just kill them, right? It's like it's the attitude of the Rothschilds and the English royal family and all these elite globalist, just pieces of shit, right, that have this misanthropic view of the world, and they have no empathy, they have no love for the human race. And, it's very sad that they're in the positions of power that they are. And it's very sad to me when I hear people, no matter their status in society, talking down about the human race and speaking of birth as if it's this tremendous burden on the world, right? When in truth, it's the people who are complaining about overpopulation and climate and talking about the immorality of the border wall and whining about this, that, and the other totally contrived, nonsensical issue, Russia, these people are actually the burden on the planet. They are actually the sandbags on the species that are holding us back in our future evolution and our future progress. And so it's a supreme irony that they are complaining about the unborn child, right? The pure fount of potential and, and opportunity for the future, right? They think that's too bad when people are born, right? But what's really too bad is that people continue to live who have no love for life, no respect for life, and to the point where they would celebrate late-term abortion as some sort of monumental human rights crusade when it's actually an abomination against the creator of this universe. Right? And I would not argue for banning abortion, right? But I do think that there's such a thing as common sense abortion restrictions. I think that, things like parental consent, right, and notification laws, I think those are fairly reasonable. I think just like there's a waiting period for buying a handgun, I think there should be a waiting period for actually killing a child, right? Buying a gun doesn't kill anyone by virtue of purchasing it, but an abortion that transaction is a murder. It is causing death, right? So why should we impose strict restrictions on guns which kill, which don't kill anyone, but people kill, about 11,000 in the United States with guns, right, when there's basically 60,000 killed this year through abortion, right? If we're going to be objective about anything we're talking about, right, we've got to at least acknowledge that there should be some common sense restrictions on abortion. And if Roe versus Wade was overturned, it would just be states' rights. It would be under the 10th Amendment. The states would be able to choose what rules make the most sense for them and their constituents. And it's this culture war is so stark at this point. It's almost like, basically, for those who have seen H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, or rather read the book, and it was made as a movie in 1960, right? There's the Eloi and the Morlocks, right? Humanity bifurcates into these two kind of genetic lines, right? Those that go underground and become cannibals, the Morlocks, and those who stay up above ground and are these blonde-haired, Aryan-looking people, and up in the sunlight and live in this peaceful society, and they're vegetarian, and they're the Eloi, right? And the Morlocks come up and they feast on the Eloi, and it's this kind of dystopian vision of far into the future when humanity is essentially separated into two species. And the way that things are going psychically, energetically, philosophically, psychologically, it's almost like it seems like it's going that way. There's people who have morality in this society, and they are on the conservative side, and there's people who have no morality, who believe that reality is just this computer simulation. Morals are all just subjective. It's a materialist, atheist, probabilistic universe that has no intrinsic meaning or order or plan, right? And, as a result, they have a worldview that doesn't respect life, that doesn't protect life, and, they lead themselves into nihilism, drug addiction, and, it's because it's a rudderless philosophy. And so cannibalism is almost the default of that. Whereas, I'm not suggesting that we should become the Eloi, but it's a funny fictional narrative to kind of describe what is happening in the human species. That basically there are forces pulling us in different directions, the force of good and the force of evil, right? The force of light and the force of darkness, as represented by the Eloi and the Morlocks. So we'll see what happens going forward, but I know I'll be sticking with the sunlight, and I am with the creator of this universe, and I know that there's more going on here than random probability. And when we actually look at the map, we see that basically this is not so lobbed and leveled in the favor of the liberal communists, right, and their satanic materialist religion, that in fact the vast majority of this country is still red team and still believe in objective morals and the right to life of the unborn child. And, I believe, hopefully, that with another presidential term of Mr. Trump, we can actually, get enough judges in the docket, to basically really change the course of this ship and, lead this country in a direction where life is respected, and that the celebration of child murder is no longer enshrined, anywhere except for the liberal hellholes of New York City and, Detroit and LA. We'll let them go on their merry way and continue to, drive themselves into oblivion due to their stupid, insane socialist policies and their corruption and their grift. And meanwhile, the rest of the country will be free to pursue their own destiny under federalism, under home rule, under the American system as it was originally designed by the founders. And that's a beautiful thing. You know, we're here in one of the more rural counties of California, though the state may be insane. Hey, one day we're going to secede and we're going to form the state of Jefferson, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. So that's my video today, really just, covering the topic, imploring people to respect life, advocating that, we have some common sense abortion rules where the father's consent is respected, the parent's consent is respected, and, just like people are, I had to wait to buy my handgun, I had a waiting period, because that was supposedly a dangerous transaction. I mean, an abortion is more than a dangerous transaction. It's actually a medical homicide of a child, and it has profound, lasting, harmful effects on the mother, or who the otherwise would have been mother, and her life going forward. And we should just have a sober reality about that and not just celebrate it and leap into it like the communist liberals do. So that's my video today. I hope you guys are all having a great day, a great week, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.